In recent time, La France has had multiple terrorist attacks, from Charlie Hebdo, the Bataclan concert, the beheading of Samuel Paty, and other terrorist attacks. To combat terrorism, the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, is signing a new bill called the Law Against Islamic Separatism. This new bill aims to combat terrorism by further assimilating its Muslim population. The most notable aspect of this bill is how this law affects the lives of French Muslim children. In the name of combating terrorism and assimilation, this law mandates that every child 3 and up be sent to French schools to get educated by the state and prohibits homeschooling. This is in addition to the laws that already prohibit young female Muslim students from wearing their headscarves in school in the name of laïcité. Hence, the question arises, is it morally right for the state to ideologically and culturally separate Muslim children from their families to better assimilate them into French society?
Nous attaquer, c'est le séparatisme islamiste.
Islam for France. That's what Emmanuel Macron wants. The French president has proposed new rules for the practitioners of Islam in his country. Macron says he wants to rein in the radicals, make Islam more compatible with the French constitution. Muslims say they're losing their identity in the name of assimilation. On Gravitas tonight, we'll tell you about Emmanuel Macron's battle with Islamism.
Notable parts of the bill that I picked up on there: a ban on homeschooling for children except in the cases of severe health problems, and any institution that seeks public funds will have to sign a charter pledging to uphold values of secularism. They were a couple of things that stuck out for me. What about you?
Yes, I mean, first of all, before getting into the details, because it's quite a detailed speech in terms of policy content. I mean, he's laying out all the steps. The words are very important because Emmanuel Macron has been dithering essentially on how to name things and how to address them. Today, he says, okay, we're going to do some straight talking and some straight actions as well. So the straight talking, he said, the problem is not secularism in France. He said, this is our values, this is not the problem. The problem is what he described as Islamist separatism.
Hasn't history shown us that when the state took in children into its care, didn't it have disastrous effect on the youth and left them as a lost generation? For what is France doing today has been done before by the United States in the 19th century by its policy of assimilation of Native American children. Due to this policy, thousands of Native American children were taken away from their parents and forced into boarding schools. The founder of these Native American boarding schools, Richard Henry Pratt, used the words, "kill the Indian and the child and save the man," to secure funding from the government. The children at these boarding schools were taught to be ashamed of their culture, value, and adapt white culture mannerisms. A culture they were taught that was superior to their own. It is now known that these kids whom the government separated from their parents and raised them in institutions in a cold, calculating manner didn't usher in a new era of Native American gentlemen and ladies who grew up to become great productive members of white society. No, most of these children grew up to become confused, insecure, and lost. They didn't fit into white society or into Native American circles. A majority of these kids grew up to suffer mental and emotional trauma, which made some of them commit suicide or turn to drugs and alcohol to numb the pain. The pain of growing up in boarding schools for Native Americans is perfectly described by Dennis Banks, founder of the American Indian Movement.
Destroy our identity. And they put us on these boarding schools. I'm one of them that they put in these boarding schools. You know, destroy, kill the Indian, save the man. And over 100,000 children were taken from their homes and pulled, and a lot in our family, and I'm fighting, where am I going, where am I going? You know, my mom and my grandma are right there, and I'm trying to hold on to them, and they come and take us apart. And, but that scene was, multiply that by 100,000 children that were taken by force from their mothers and from their grandmas and grandparents. That destroy the language, destroy the songs. Matter of fact, you couldn't sing any native song. You couldn't speak any native language. The vernacular would be English, and English only. That's how they wrote it up.
In the boarding schools?
Yeah. And there was corporal punishment there. But there was also, I mean, I was in a school where there was priests and nuns. And that was the first one, and I heard the screams. And I was part of the screams. And the running away, and the beatings, and the whippings by belts and leather, and raping. I heard those screams. I hear it today. I said I would never forgive this government for allowing a policy like that.
And on the other side of the world, policies of assimilation were also just as tragic, with the Aboriginal children who became known as the Stolen Generation. From the years 1910 to 1970, Aboriginal children were taken away from their parents and given away to strangers in boarding schools. As one of the survivors of these boarding schools, Sheila Humphreys, tells her story, those schools were not meant for the benefit of the kids.
It's about my childhood. Thousands of children who've been into orphanages, institutions across Australia. Mum placed me in the orphanage when I was 4 years old at Ninorsia for education. At the age of 8, she removed me and my older sister. She saw that we weren't getting an education. The moment that we left the orphanage, there was a state alert for the West Australian Police to apprehend and arrest us. 8-year-old, 10-year-old, never committed a crime. We were arrested, we were handcuffed, and we were taken back. The only time I can remember being with Mum and Dad is 3 months of my life. 2 years after we were removed, Mum passed on. We were in the laundry working. Reverend Mother came in to call myself and my sister aside. What she said to us, I don't think I ever forgave her. Your mother's dead, get on with your work. This is coming from a so-called Christian person. Many times as a child, I tried to take my life. It was easy. I could have thrown myself down the stairwells. The orphanage wasn't a very nice place to be in. We weren't orphans. We had family. We had Mum and Dad. The reason we were taken away, the colour of our skin. We were placed in that orphanage and forgotten.
For the likes of Richard Henry Pratt and etc. really didn't care about the well-being of the children. For despite what they say of trying to save the man, it was a case of, as Bob Marley once sang, kill them before they grow. The same is true with the new policies of assimilation in France. Those politicians, Emmanuel Macron, Marine Le Pen or etc. really didn't care about the Muslim children, about their freedom or well-being. For all this talk of liberating Muslim women and etc. just a guise, a ruse to destroy Muslim communities and their heritage. Moreover, no politician and no institution can replace the love and warmth parents and community can give to a child. For as Nietzsche once said, state is the coldest of the coldest monsters. L'État and its bureaucracies are capable and are needed for many things. However, we cannot delegate all power and all responsibilities, especially when it comes to the upbringing of our children, to the government. So to reiterate, no matter the political problems of modern day France or threats of terrorism that it is facing, for its politicians to use innocent children in the large political machinations or to go after the children of their so-called enemies to get at their enemies is shameful and very immoral. It was wrong when it happened with the stolen generations of Australia. It was wrong when it happened to the Janissaries, when young Christian boys were taken away by the Ottoman Empire from their parents and put into military service. And it was wrong with Operation Pedro Pan, when the CIA and Catholic priests worked together to spread propaganda that succeeded in orphanaging thousands of Cuban children just to undermine Castro. And it is wrong today in France, for even most prison gangs wouldn't stoop so low to go after children.